NFS News, I'm your host Frank Mazza, and today's segment, live from the studio kitchen, focuses on sleep and its association with the Mediterranean diet in older adults. Sleep quality and duration has been shown to affect lipid homeostasis and increase inflammatory cytokines. Previously, micronutrients such as calcium and certain fatty acids have been shown to increase sleep quality and decrease chronic inflammation. The Mediterranean diet has been shown to decrease inflammation and is characterized by an eating pattern of high vegetable and fruit consumption, predominantly plant-based proteins, high fat intake from olive oil, moderate fish intake, and low meat consumption. This longitudinal study of 1,639 randomly chosen adults over the age of 65 aims to assess the dietary pattern of the Mediterranean diet, as they evaluate sleep duration and quality in relation to the Mediterranean diet adherence, as well as investigating its sex and age-specific effects in an older population. Sleep quality and duration were measured through a self-reported questionnaire over a duration of 1 month with a final 2-hour neurological evaluation. Patients were excluded if diagnosed with dementia or mild cognitive impairment. This study included 12 self-reported measures of sleep quality, such as feeling rested in the morning. Each question had a possible rating of 1 to 6 based on the frequency of the measure. High scores indicated greater sleep dysfunction. Adherence to the Mediterranean diet over the previous month was based on a food frequency questionnaire scoring system, with an overall high score indicating high adherence to the Mediterranean diet pattern. For foods typical to the Mediterranean diet, increased scores indicated high consumption. For foods not associated with the Mediterranean diet, increased scores indicated lower or no consumption. Participants were then grouped into low, medium, and high Mediterranean diet adherence groups, with the low adherence group being the reference group. Covariates measured included sex, age, depression, years of education, body mass index, level of physical activity, and total energy intake. Sleep quality was positively associated with the Mediterranean diet adherence in both the unadjusted and adjusted models for those aged 65 to 75 only. Sleep duration was not associated with the Mediterranean diet adherence in either model. No sex-specific differences were found. Furthermore, low Mediterranean diet adherence was correlated to higher depression and body mass index, as well as lower total energy intake. While the study corroborates similar study findings of the Mediterranean diet's association with increased sleep quality, many studies showcase adherence to the Mediterranean diet leads to increase in sleep duration as well, with one study showing an increase of greater than 2 hours per night after a 3-year high adherence. This finding was of a similar age group. Perhaps the effects of the Mediterranean diet are time dependent. Only future studies will tell. This study further supports previous findings of the Mediterranean diet's non-sex specific decrease in systematic inflammation via C-reactive protein, a marker for systematic inflammation, while refuting studies which find male-specific decreases in systematic inflammation, specifically adipocytokines. This study's strength relies on its control for patients' cognitive status, which has not been previously taken into account, even though increased cognitive impairment is associated with decreased sleep quality and duration, as well as decreased sleep quality leading to increased cognitive impairment later in life. Interestingly, the Mediterranean diet has been shown to protect against cognitive impairment via its anti-inflammatory properties, thus decreasing the inflammatory-related brain conditions such as dementia and Alzheimer's. Furthermore, it retains a low risk of selection bias as participants were randomly selected, therefore theoretically limiting the effects of possible confounds such as socioeconomic status. While the authors implied that another strength of the study lies in its holistic approach to dietary pattern analysis and less synergistic or antagonistic food effects, they do not provide any means to specify which associations they are referring to or any way for their quantification. Food synergy refers to the complex intercompound relations within foods rather than the common notion of different foods affecting others' bioavailability. Other limiting factors of this study are its selection and detection bias due to its self-reported measures. It should also be noted that a wholly agreed upon exhaustive criteria of how one measures sleep quality has not been agreed upon by experts. But most agree that higher sleep quality is associated with shorter time to fall asleep, fewer awakenings during sleep, and reduced need for napping after sleep. Objective measures of brain activity associate higher quality sleep with increased deep sleep or N3 brain activity in older adults. This study does not include any objective measure of sleep quality. No systematic exploration of the relationship between subjective and objective measures has been completed thus far, with some studies showcasing subjective and objective measures of sleep quality greatly differing in respect to the same patient. In addition, the cultural norm of biphasic sleeping patterns in Greece, which is where all participants were surveyed, limits general public applicability in the West, where monophasic sleeping patterns remain the norm. Finally, the heightened economic requirements to retain a Mediterranean diet in the West further limits its possible general adaptation. As admitted by the study's authors, this paper should be considered within the context of its methodological limitations. It should not be used to establish causal relationships, only to direct hypotheses for future investigations. For example, a double-blind randomized control trial with confound control isoenergetic follow-up, subjective and objective measures with food supplied by the lab would provide a gold standard of reference from which the scientific community can extrapolate to accommodate different income levels. While this is just one example, all of the previous limitations provide an opportunity for future research implications by their addressing. Finally, as always, our 2 cents on how other media outlets have covered this story. In general, science-oriented platforms summarize the article well as limiting bold, unsubstantiated claims. However, news outlets simply looking for traffic to their sites were less careful with their language, offering catchy, often untrue titles to generate viewer interest. While some stories might push the Mediterranean diet as the panacea for all ailments, remember to search and see if your score is credible.